Well, hello and welcome to those of you who are joining us live today for our first in a three-part webinar series. And also, I just want to say hello and welcome to those of you who will be watching this in a later recording. We are really pleased that you would take time out of your day to chat with us today, and hope that the webinar today is going to be exactly what you're looking for in terms of Portrait of a Graduate and how PBL can support the development of those competencies. So to kick things off, I'll go ahead and share my screen. And again, just welcome you all for the first in our three-part webinar series. My name is Sarah Scott. I am the Vice President of Partnerships here in the West at Defined. And today we are talking about why project-based learning is key to building Portrait of a Graduate competencies. So it's been quite a hot topic amongst the partner districts that we work with and just school districts across the country. So we really wanted to put together a series and really explore the topic. Sorry, just letting some other folks in. All right, so today we have two special guests with us. The first is John Larmer, who some of you may know as the co-author of the Gold Standard for PBL, and he is also our senior PBL advisor here at Defined. You might also have crossed paths with John in his former work with the Buck Institute, now PBL Works, of course, where he was the editor-in-chief for a decade or more at least. And then also, I would like to introduce Andy Schaefer, our president here at Defined, who's going to talk with you about what we are doing as an organization to support districts with the assessment and measurement of those Portrait of a Graduate competencies. So without further ado, I will kick it over to John to get us started in discussing why PBL is key to developing Portrait of a Graduate competencies.
All right, thanks, Sarah. I'll share my screen. Hi, everybody. I'm coming to you from California, and I'm very glad to be with you today. Welcome to our webinar, and I'll be talking about sort of a basic introduction to what Portrait of a Graduate is, even though a lot of you may already know it so well. And then I'll talk a little bit about how project-based learning really helps move it from a poster to practice in a school or a district. Okay, let me share my screen. Okay. First, I'd like you just to do a little thought exercise here for a few seconds. Think about words or phrases that people would use if you asked them to describe an ideal graduate of the K-12 system. Now, those of you who've done a Portrait of a Graduate or are familiar with them, I'm sure those words came to you right away because you've heard them a lot. For those of you who may not have thought about Portrait of a Graduate or thought about this question, I think you'll find the words and phrases you came up with are ones that people of all sorts come up with when you ask a diverse group of stakeholders to describe an ideal graduate. If you ask educators, students, parents, community members, business people, higher education folks, you'll get a very similar list of words and phrases. And we used to do this kind of exercise at the beginning of the PBL 101 workshops at the Buck Institute for many years to sort of kick off the workshop, sort of an entry event, making the case that project-based learning is one of the best ways to create that ideal graduate. More on that to come very shortly. So you get things like this when you ask that question. Here are some examples of portraits of a graduate from various places, many in the West. I love the rocks there from Durango in Colorado. But you'll see a similar list of things on these: critical thinker, communicator, collaborator, innovator. You'll see resilience a little bit more these days after the pandemic. I've noticed more of those kind of words cropping up. But you get a remarkably similar set no matter where you go. And so a Portrait of a Graduate is a district's or school's collective vision of the competencies and personal qualities that students should possess when they graduate. to be successful in the world beyond school. And that word collective is important. So it cannot be a top-down, something that leaders of a school deliver to their school or district. It can't be done by a committee in a room. It really is done with most successfully with a considerable amount of stakeholder input. Often it can take a year or more to develop these things if you really get buy-in from your community, which is essential, I think, to making it really become practice, not just a poster. And a portrait goes beyond traditional subject area knowledge. That's sort of the key to a lot of this. It's not, you'll see academic content on these oftentimes, but you'll see mostly things that go beyond just single subject area knowledge. They're also known as all these things. You might have some of these terms in your school. Some schools and districts I know have used the word learner instead of graduate because a lot of students throughout the K-12 system should have these same qualities. So the purpose of a portrait, as I said, is sort of to be it sort of shows the district commitment to the whole child, that it acknowledges students need to learn more than what the traditional subject area knowledge is, and to be successful in today's world. And that certain goals are kind of overarching and are everyone's responsibility, and they need to be explicitly taught, not just kind of assumed in a school. So they're important for the modern workplace because employers say they want people with these competencies, people who can solve problems, think critically, work in teams, who are innovative, creative, able to communicate with diverse people and different audiences, cross-cultural understanding, all those kind of things are really important in the modern workplace. Colleges say the same things. They do want, of course, students with a baseline of subject area knowledge, but more and more colleges want students who can do those same things, solve problems, think critically. And a lot of students who've been to PBL schools, I've heard, find themselves much better able to do that than students from traditional schools who maybe can take notes in a lecture and take a test, but aren't able to work in teams as well or make presentations or work as independently or approach their professors. Citizens in a democracy, of course, need some of these same skills that need to be able to think critically about issues today and solving some of those complex problems we face in our country and the world. Need to think critically about the information sources they're getting to make those decisions and take responsibility and feel they have an active role in solving the world's problems. And finally, just for life in general, those are great skills to have. Interpersonal relationships, family relationships, friends, colleagues, and so forth. Now, however, unfortunately, the portrait of a graduate often just lives as a poster on the wall. I'd say in most places, many, maybe most, the portrait is only a poster on the wall or maybe a page on the website. So it's sort of seen as a vague statement of intentions. It doesn't guide action. It's equivalent to a mission statement in a lot of places. It doesn't live in curriculum instruction, the daily teaching and learning. It's not explicitly focused on by most teachers. So it's kind of a side effect of teaching and learning at best. So schools and districts are trying to move from poster to practice through some of these things. They might provide professional development on including portrait of a graduate goals in instruction, how to include more critical thinking in your lessons or problem solving or creativity and so forth, which is fine as far as it goes. They might write rubrics for each competency. So there's a district or a school rubric for critical thinking, problem solving, et cetera. They might provide maker spaces or genius hours, special programs like that, or citizenship programs where students have, do things in the real world that demonstrate citizenship. There might be community internships and mentorships that some schools provide students. And in some cases, this is more rare, new assessment systems with portfolios and performance tasks that are designed to teach and assess the portrait of graduate competencies. And even more rare, you might see grading and reporting on student progress on those goals. And more on that in a little bit. However, the professional development is often limited in quality and impact. This is true of professional development in general. Of course, a lot of teachers would tell you that the workshop was okay, but not much effect back in my classroom. And the quality of, if teachers get some worksheets or whatever to help improve critical thinking as a little side lesson, it's not very much impact, not very high quality professional development. Some teachers find it very challenging, or they may be even reluctant to teach portrait of a graduate goals because that's not how they were trained. It's not how they were taught. It's not what they've been doing their career. They teach their subject, history, English, math, what have you. And to teach portrait of a graduate goals on top of that, it's an already crowded plate. So it's hard to fit those in. Or they might say they already do teach those skills. But again, it's kind of not explicit. It's kind of a side effect. Or they might even be reluctant to say, well, those skills are great, but I want them to learn math. I want them to know history. It's great to be a critical thinker, but that's not really my job. Those rubrics that districts and schools might write are kind of like those posters on the wall. They're not widely used for planning and instruction and for assessment purposes, both for teachers to assess student work or for students to self-assess themselves. It happens sometimes, but oftentimes they're they're written with much fanfare and then neglected. Those special programs, those maker spaces, genius hours, those community connections and mentorships, they may not reach all students. Some students have access to them, but some do not. And I really believe that portrait of a graduate competencies should be what all students deserve and what all students get in a school or district. And finally, those assessments and tests and grading, they still focus mainly on traditional academics. That's true of standardized tests. It's true of teacher-made tests. The grading system, certainly in most schools and districts, do not take into account portrait of a graduate competencies. So the bottom line is there's little effect on teaching and learning and on students. But I believe, as you might expect, one of the best ways to move a portrait of a graduate from poster to practice is project-based learning. And this is, by PBL, I mean high-quality project-based learning. It's always important to note that. This is the HQ PBL framework, the high-quality PBL framework, which you can see more about at their website, hqpbl.org. They have these 6 criteria for what a student should experience when they're in a good project. I helped develop this framework a few years ago. The Buck Institute led the development of it, but several different organizations and experts sort of weighed in. It's meant to be a shared open source document for the world to use. And Defined uses this a lot in their developing their materials and professional development. So intellectual challenge and accomplishment has to do with depth and rigor, high quality products, inquiry, driving questions, all that kind of stuff. Those aspects of project-based learning fall into that category. Authenticity, the real-world aspects of PBL, which you know so well. It connects to the community, to real-world issues. Experts are brought in. Students find the tasks authentically meaningful to themselves, their own lives, to their future careers, perhaps, or to solving real-world problems in their community or the wider world. A public product where students share their work with more than just their classmates and teacher, which, as you know, really ups the stakes, ups the quality, and makes it seem more real, the project. Can make it a real impact on the world. Collaboration, PBL can be done individually, of course, but we think that that working in teams is such a vital 21st century skill that collaboration deserves to be one of the 6 elements of HQ PBL. And project management skills, another category that's so important for today's workplace. And employers would love to hear students who have managed projects and demonstrated leadership and planning capabilities through learning that skill. And you can't learn that skill, after all, without doing projects. And finally, reflection, which has to do with thinking about what you're learning, how you're learning, the products you're creating, getting feedback, making them better, both during and at the end of a project, to look back on what you've learned and what you've gained and where you need to still grow. So that's the HQ PBL framework. And project-based learning, of course, helps meet all these things. In a project, you're really focused more explicitly on these things if it's designed according to a framework like this or the gold standard model the Buck Institute developed. So PBL can really help build all these things and in a well-designed and well-delivered project. I think of project-based learning as a high occupancy vehicle. So here's an HOV lane, and it contains several of these portrait of a graduate competencies in one package. So you shouldn't put all of them in there, of course, in one project. You can't teach and assess 6 or 7 different things, but 1 or 2 per project. You can sort of plan out, this project's going to focus on critical thinking. The next one's going to focus more on creativity. Collaboration maybe runs throughout the project. So it contains several competencies. They're taught and assessed It has those rubrics are in there that can be used for the competency assessment. It has real world and community connections, expert connections, and PBL should be provided for all students, not just some. And it will get you where you want to go faster in terms of developing those portrait of a graduate competencies, like an HOV lane on a freeway. This came to me across my desk a few years ago. Someone from Fulton County Public Schools in Fairfax County, Virginia, developed this nifty little graphic showing how PBL could be a vehicle, a delivery model for all these things. And they called it buzzwords, a little tongue-in-cheek. You can see portrait of a graduate up there. You might see SEL on this truck these days and a couple other things. And I like how the driver of the truck has content on the hat. It shows that, makes the point that PBL is still based in content and real standards from subject areas. So thank you, Fairfax County Public Schools. And here's what, for those of you with a more poetic bent, here's what Walt Whitman said about PBL. He was prescient. All right, so Defined has developed its own portrait of a graduate, these 8 competencies. And it's not meant to be prescriptive. It's not saying to districts and schools, you should adopt ours. It's meant to show that Defined's materials align with these and can be used to teach and assess these competencies. And Defined has sort of fleshed all these out with a set of indicators. And I'll be going through these first 2 today and the rest of these in future webinars. So here are the first 2 sets of indicators: career readiness and academic knowledge and skills. So for career readiness, the first one there connects academic knowledge and skills to careers. It answers the common question students have. Why do we need to learn this? When will I ever use it? Well, people in this career uses it, and you're going to use it to create this product and solve this problem that you're being presented with in this project. It shows awareness of opportunities and needs. So students who are given the chance to do project-based learning, which actually connects to the real world, they become much more aware of careers and problems to be solved out in the world and possible opportunities for them in their future. Project management processes, like I said, you've got to do projects to learn those processes. And so, and as I said, employers really value that skill. If they see it on your resume and see you've done some projects, it might get you hired. And finally, it helps students understand their own skills. They get to know themselves better by doing those projects that bring them out into the real world and work with other people to solve problems and meet those challenges. And they grow as people, and they sort of clarify their values and their dreams and strengths and their goals. And then academic knowledge and skills, that just sort of speaks to the stereotype that's still out there about project-based learning, that it's not a good way to teach academic knowledge and skills. And a lot of the recent research in recent years, Lucas Education Research Studies, for example, recently really show that PBL, when it's done well, designed well with standards in mind and taught effectively, it does improve academic knowledge and skills. So students are definitely building their disciplinary understanding at a more in-depth level. It really leads to deeper learning, as you well know. They're applying their learning to new and unfamiliar contexts. That's the idea of transfer. And research does show that students have the ability to transfer knowledge with PBL. Research and inquiry, of course, are fundamental to a lot of good projects. Inquiry, I would say, for all projects. And finally, pursuing knowledge. But projects kind of give students that the motivation to learn. They see the point of learning. It's not just we're learning this for a test or a grade. It's because we want to solve real world problems. So it sort of gives them a sense that knowledge is more than just something you do for school. It's got that real world application. So that's those 2 competencies in a nutshell. And I've written a 4-part blog series on these competencies, sort of introduction to the whole idea, and then I went through each of these competencies. And I'll be going through the other 6 in the next 2 webinars in this series: citizenship, innovation, creativity, problem solving, critical thinking, communication, and collaboration. And I'll be showing some examples of projects that build those skills. So that's about all from me. Back to you, Sarah, to introduce.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks so much, John, for a great explanation and discussion around how PBL can support, development of those competencies. Before I turn this over to Andy Schaefer, our president here at the Defined, to talk about a new service that we're offering that can help districts measure the effective or assess and measure against your portrait of a graduate, I do want to just take a moment and share with you how Defined supports and empowers more teachers to implement and use project-based learning for this purpose. So we offer two platforms that are student-facing. The first is Defined Learning, the second is Defined Careers, and then Defined Academy is where we house all of our teacher professional learning. That's our teacher professional learning portal. So the two platforms that we offer are both K-12. Up in the left, you'll see Defined Learning. This is ready-made projects anchored in careers aligned to your core academic standards across the content areas. So, when teachers are not taking that leap, or really regardless of where you are in that project-based learning journey, ready-made, customizable, high-quality projects can be a really great tool for, building PBL capacity across the district. So Defined Learning is aligned to your core academic standards. And then we took that a step further with the career component and developed Defined Careers to really use PBL in providing students with more authentic career experiences. So not aligned to the standards, more focused on the clusters, the pathways, and really giving students an opportunity to experience careers using PBL. So I do want to take a moment and just pop into Defined Learning. This will help create some good context for what Andy is going to share in terms of how we can support you in your profile of a graduate measurements and goals. So I am looking at a teacher edition of Defined Learning, and you'll see here all of the different core content areas, including computer science and STEM, a new elective that we've added. So if I go ahead and click on math, you'll see here that I have a K-12 library of ready-made projects. I can click to see in any of the courses the unit outline, which should mirror the scope and sequence for your particular grade level and or content area. So I'm going to just give you a real high level of one project and then turn it over to Andy to show you how we can customize this for your district. I'll drop in here to computer science and STEM. And in this elective, teachers are going to find projects not only for computer science in each of the grade bands, but also STEM and United Nations sustainability goal projects, engineering, and also interdisciplinary STEAM projects. So I'm going to go ahead and click on middle school engineering. You'll see to the right all of the different unit topics: design, aerospace, structural, etc., engineering. And for each of these different topics, you're going to see a number of different projects that a teacher or a student could choose to work on. You'll see that career anchor right there when I move through. So today, I'm going to just click on one project, walk you through our approach, and then show you how we can customize for you. So to start things off, we provide teachers with a ready-made presentation. It is fully customizable, but we lean into that career component right up front. So starting with a brief career kind of introduction on the topic. In this case, we're looking at designing 3D animal prosthetics. And then we're going to follow that with a real world connection video. So, really showing students up front how we're going to build relevancy to what they are learning. There's formative kind of check-in questions along the way. And then we use that understanding by design, goal, role, audience, and situation video to introduce the project. Again, I'm not going to go into this in any depth, but I will just show you the script, the role. They're an engineer. So we're really asking students to put on that career hat, assume the role of, in this case, a design engineer, and think about how they're going to be working with developing animal prosthetics. When we will provide some initial research questions for students to get started, we're going to provide some helpful vocabulary as they're working through this, and then also some research resources to get them started. Additionally, depending on, in this case, the product choice here is threefold. So students, they could be working in groups, they could be working individually. This could be where students are choosing which type of project they want to work on. But nonetheless, for each of these different product choices, we're going to be providing a ready-made point and click 4-point rubric. These are aligned to and written according to the standards, so that, you know, it's safe to assume if students are getting 3s and 4s, they are demonstrating their understanding and ability to transfer their knowledge to this product design. So you'll see each of those for all of the projects, again, whether group or individual. And then we're going to support them with a little more information on the product. We walk students through the design process, through that design thinking, starting with brainstorming, analysis, and decision-making, and all the way through to that, you know, critique and revision into the final project through this design process video. They will be checking in along the way, whether in their own defined account or, you know, however the teacher or instructor has asked them to do. They would upload their finished product into our portfolio, and again, you know, be assessed according to that rubric that they've seen at the beginning. And last but not least, in every project is that opportunity for students to reflect, which is part of that high quality, you know, project-based learning framework. So the last thing I'll show you before I kick this over to Andy to share how we can incorporate your profile of a graduate competencies into these projects is down here, the defined careers connection. So when, you know, a student finishes, you know, they're working on engineering here, it might be math, it might be science, right, in a different course, they also will have the opportunity then to see what other careers can they actually experience if they really felt, you know, aligned to the career being introduced in any of these projects. So they would then, you know, click into the defined careers component, and the projects that they complete in either defined learning or defined careers will then be added to that portfolio, which will then use to assess against the traits of your graduate profile. So I know that was a really quick overview of how we're empowering more teachers first to do project-based learning. And at this point, I will stop sharing, turn it over to Andy to talk about how we can customize this for you.
All right, thank you very much, Sarah. Quick check and make sure that you can see my screen, Sarah.
Now we can. Yep.
Fantastic. Okay. Well, again, welcome everyone. Again, our California audience, we greatly appreciate you taking some time out of your busy day to spend some time with me, and of course, all those folks that indicated they would not be able to attend live. We're looking forward to sharing this recording with you. And thank you, Sarah, for that context, which will really be helpful, and some of the information that I'm going to share. And of course, John, thank you for the great opening presentation as well. But this next portion, you know, what we'll be talking about is really all about helping to meet that challenge of actually measuring these global competencies, these things that we want students to be able to walk across the stage with, graduate with. What are those specific things? And to paraphrase John, you know, it's one thing to have a portrait of a graduate. It's another thing altogether to actually be able to show growth, to be able to provide some assurance that students are leaving with those particular skills. Here's another iteration of defines portrait of a graduate, and this is really just we've been doing this since 2009 when we really were setting out as an organization to help students with critical thinking, with problem solving, with communication, these variety of different skills that we have endeavored to work into and build into our projects for these competencies that we believe as an organization are so important for students to be able to have. So we've done this. We've been building these in for a very long time. We've even, for those of you that are familiar with us, we've built ways for students to measure themselves. If you choose, again, as John said, we're not trying to have people necessarily adopt our portrait of a graduate, but what it does do, it gives folks ideas. They can look at our indicators, and if they do decide to use that before they get going on their own, whatever that may be, we're also going to provide means for them to take a look at how students can measure themselves against these competencies. And of course, teachers can comment on it and so on and so forth. But again, this is all really focused on our work and what we had done over time. But it wasn't until we really, in this last, I would call it 6 months or so, having a conversation with a district in Colorado, Thompson School District. And they were looking at what we had to offer, and they shared their portrait of a graduate. And this is going to be very similar, to some of the things that John has shared, but communicator, a critical thinker, citizen, collaborator, self-advocate. We certainly have many of these aspects, many of these attributes in the defined portion of a graduate. But then looking at things like self-advocate, which we don't necessarily have listed, but looking at these indicators such as seeking career pathways and using financial resources wisely, engaging in reflection, and so on and so forth. These are things that are already built into projects. So what Thompson was asking us is like, hey, we love what you're doing. How can you make this? How can we make it even more impactful for us and for our portrait for a graduate? How can we really be intentional about showcasing improvements in this over time, and also again something that can impact all students? So that really helped us with moving forward in how what we were planning on doing around helping folks with measure their portrait of a graduate. Just a couple other quick examples, and this is kind of a teaser because you'll hear from the San Ramon Valley Unified School District in part 2 of this series that John and Sarah will be leading. But again, some similar characteristics. They call it the learner profile, with critical thinkers, creative contributors, so on and so forth. And then just for demonstration purposes, another one, San Marcos, someone that Sarah is having conversations with, adaptability, communication, empathy, critical thinking, leadership. These are all unique characteristics that are important to that local environment that we're endeavoring to help folks with. So this leads us to the next portion of our discussion, and really a couple things that I have to share with you, and food for thought. But as Sarah mentioned, we have a new service, and this is designed to help our partners do just this and measure these competencies, and it's called Define Goals. And define goals, there's a lot of text on this page. So don't worry about reading too much of this, but it's really 4 different aspects: goals and plans, and there's goal catalogs, data analysis, and of course professional learning for those that are going to be utilizing these projects and measuring specific skills as they go. So I've got actually have something a slide here that will show a little bit more about what this process looks like, and what the key components of defined goals, and how our team will help school districts in accomplishing this measuring of their portrait of a graduate, measuring any competence they have over time. So the first part, and you saw a brief look at Sarah demonstrating a project. So as indicated, our projects meet and measure many different global competencies. What we will do is, working with the local district, is to select specific projects that are measuring exactly what you're looking at to accomplish. And in many cases, they will be ready off the shelf. In other cases, they will be customizing those projects to make sure that we're measuring those specific competencies. That next part of the 4 quadrants was the goal catalog. So what does this mean? This means that we want to make it really, really easy for teachers to find. They don't have to hunt through our entire library to find those specific projects. They have been selected by our curriculum team working with the local district. And then in addition to that, you saw the rubrics. These rubrics are going to be customized to specifically measure those individual competencies. And so it's really customized for local use. And then also kind of provide some guidelines. You might be measuring specific things at specific grades. And we would suggest doing one project in the fall, and then another in the spring to measure the same competencies the same year, and then you might move on to a different competency the following year and come back to another one in another grade, for example. The next component, professional development for teachers. Now, and also add administrators in this too, because we want to make this as simple as possible on teachers. And they might be utilizing our library or utilizing project-based learning for the first time. So it's going to be really multifold. But how do you utilize these projects? They're already going to be customized and working with the districts for the teachers. You may be wanting to introduce them in a specific subject, or you might want to be doing this in multiple subjects. Are we going to be doing measuring competencies in math, in science, and social study, whatever that may be? But we're going to be providing professional development with those teachers, not only on how to deliver it, but then more importantly, how to grade effectively, utilizing those rubrics to get consistent measurement across your district. And then a big part of this is going to be that data and analysis. So again, going from the poster to actually having some data to show how are we doing in critical thinking, how are we doing in collaboration, and not just at the district level or from an administrator level, but also at a student level. So a student can see how they're doing compared to your unique measurements, and to provide evidence in their student portfolio that will be collect and augmented over time. So how does this all look? So briefly, you saw from Sarah what the defined learning interface looks like. So there will be a custom tile that we're creating for Thompson, Colorado, for other partners that has those specific projects within a tile in the course library. I've made this blown up and easy for you to see, but you can see a tile customized to measure those specific competencies on this particular page. Drilling into those units that Sarah had indicated before, this is all customized. So we're looking at an example of grade 4. You might have something different in grade 1 and grade 2, grade 3, but the idea here is to be hand selecting a project for a teacher to use at the beginning of the year, another one to use at the end of the year. Again, you may choose to increase the number of projects over time as teachers become more used to this type of teaching and learning. And it's certainly not limited to other projects in the library, but when it comes to measuring, in this case, adaptability, communication, and empathy, we're going to have hand-selected projects for you to utilize at the beginning of the year as well as the end of the year. So the rubrics, as mentioned, those customized rubrics, we have all of our rubrics already tagged with skills and competencies, but then we're going to take a closer look. Your team working with our team to make sure that we're measuring and building these rubrics and then distributing those. But our defined team of experts will be creating customized rubrics with your district competencies for point and click, easy to measure information that will be rolling into a variety of different dashboards. So what does that look like? Just from an administrative standpoint, you are able to run reports at a variety of different levels. You can look at different grade bands. You can look at individual classrooms. You can look at entire schools. You can look at an entire district to measure different levels of reporting on these key attributes. I'll share with you just a couple of snapshots of what this will look like. So, for example, this particular report is showcasing skills over a period of time. What level do I want to look at? What do I want to look at year over year? Do I want to look over a single school year, multiple years? This is a dashboard that will allow administrators to showcase and report on those skills that you're talking to your parents about, your board about, students about, all of those things, and easy to recognize, easy to read dashboard. Another type of report is how much have we completed, and how are we doing on all these different competencies? What percentage of our students have not yet started? How many have completed it? So on and so forth. But so you have progress reports as you go as well. And it's not just for the administrators and teachers as well. And this is just a quick snapshot. And Sarah didn't get a chance to show you this, but she mentioned to it. There's a student interface where a student goes to pick up those projects that they've been assigned. So if I'm a fourth grade student and and we're going through this process and I'm working on collaboration and I have 3 partners in my group, I'm going to have the project or projects that I'm assigned to complete here in my dashboard when I log in. But also I have my portfolio and plan. So as I complete and I get feedback from my teachers on how I'm doing, the section will display those individual components for me and I'm also able to have this two-way conversation with my instructor or instructors as I continue to provide evidence as I'm growing in these particular areas. So this is just a real quick example, but we're looking at creativity right here, and a student interacting with the teacher, student being asked questions, and also having the opportunity to have their projects showcased here. In this particular instance, there are 4 different pieces of evidence that a student has included in their portfolio as part of measuring creativity. This is not limited to just defined learning projects. There could be other items as well, which has been something that's been very, very well received as far as evidence for students. So that, in a nutshell, is what defining goals is all about. And just taking us back to that screen, and I'll go ahead and stop sharing, Sarah, and turn things back over to you, and any questions answer any questions that are from the audience.
Yeah, so we did have one, and I'm going to let you answer. So you and a district can drop their own language into your platform project by project. The answer is yes. And is it, I believe it's something that we will do for the district. I don't know that the district will have the capability to go in and do that themselves. Is that right?
For starters, it is something that we'll handle. It'll be an iterative process, working hand in hand with the district. But right now, we are doing the work. If you wanted to say profile of a learner, if you wanted to say a portrait of a graduate, if you wanted to have those specific competencies, and of course, as we measure these and change things from grade to grade, for example, there may be a project that's measuring 2 competencies. So your unit outline will reflect exactly that language that you were looking for. We have not yet built the interface to have you go in and change it on the fly, but that would be a likely next step for us.
Right. But certainly it will be customized, the rubric language, to a specific district's traits and indicators of that. That's sort of the
100%. Yes. That's what makes this. And this is exactly what we're trying to do. We want that rubric to be exactly what your look-fors are. You can always tap into us, for suggestions. Look at what we've done elsewhere. But that language in those rubrics will reflect your language, and be exactly hyper-local is exactly what we're trying to go for.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Andy and John. One last question. What kinds of other inputs can be ported into the portfolio?
That's a great question. So we've built it flexible enough. So we even have this personal section for students. So it doesn't have to you're going to have your projects that have been assigned by defined in your portfolio. You upload and complete those projects. But I can have a video. I can have a project I've created, a photo, a PowerPoint, any digital artifact that I want to upload into my portfolio as a student. I can do that, and it's actually separated off into my personal section that you can tab back and forth in between the defined section and personal. So anything you'd like.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much to Andy, John, and to all of you who have tuned in live today, and also who will watch this recording. We will be sending that out. Let me just go ahead and let you know about the rest of the series. Thanks again. As I mentioned, everyone's going to be getting a recording of the session today, and then we do have 2 more episodes in this From Poster to Practice series, where John Larmer will be taking you through some of those additional competencies that we started talking about today. We'll be featuring we've got some special districts joining us for episode 2 and 3. So we hope to see you again on the registration list. And thanks again for taking time out to learn about this and just spend some time talking about PBL and how it relates to PoG. So with that, we will sign off. If you want more information or want to schedule any time to talk about how we can support your district, my contact information is there. You can also follow us on Twitter. So thanks so much.
Have a great day, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.